Welcome back to another edition of My Voice is a Weapon. This is episode number 10, and I had something else planned for this episode, but it got not canceled but postponed. So whatever I was gonna bring, it was a little bit more special. It's not gonna happen here today, but it will probably come up on Sunday. Now, I know that I tend to speak about stuff that is a little bit too dense. I realize the last episode took a lot of me. My energy was drained because it's something that, I'm still managing myself to come to terms with to how to deal with this shit. So today I want to talk about something a little lighter. I think it might be a little boring for some people, but hey, let's go with it, all right? Because I think it's a much broader subject than we realize. So I want to talk about time, and I'm not even going to get scientific or give any sort of explanation of how time works, because it's not my field. I'm not capable of that. I wish I was, but truthfully, my intellectual capabilities are cut short in this area. So what I am going to do is I'm gonna go through how we perceive time in many different aspects, because there's a lot of different ways to perceive time. There's the individual way that we each have, which is how we manage time according to what we have to do during the day. So that's where, for example, because we all have different jobs, different schedules, different ways of doing things. There's people that work night shifts. There's people that work day shifts. There's people that have both, right? One week they work in a certain time period. The next week it changes, like it was my case for the past year. I had crazy schedules. Every week it changed, so I had to readapt every week to what my schedule was. So yeah, I'm gonna analyze that aspect of time a little bit deeper and see how I feel about it, what I think it's good, what I think it's not so good, what I think I will change in my way of perceiving time, what I think about time, if there's anything that I need to improve, change, eliminate, whatever needs to be done. So, first thing, what I first brought to the table was the perception that we have about time individually, but I want to connect that to the fact that it seems like for the past 40 years, 50 years, maybe a little longer, we think that time tends to speed up and go faster. Now, I'm not sure if there's a scientific explanation for that, because I did some research, and there's a lot of different. There's some people that are specialized in that area, and they think that it did speed up. But then there's a contrary theory from other people that believe that instead of it didn't speed up, is in fact slowing down. So because there's a lot of conflict there, I'm not gonna go into that part, okay? But what I am gonna say is this. Individually, we all have our own ways to deal with time, because we have to adapt ourselves to how we can manage the few hours that we have during the day to do everything that we have to do. And we have to compress all of that. And sometimes we don't always have the time to do everything in that short amount of time. And that short period can be very stressful, right? That's why we feel that time goes so fast. Yeah, that's exactly why we tend to think that time went away too fast, right? We just went through 2020, an insane year with a lot of changes for everybody in many aspects. The pandemic might be having an effect on how we're going to start to perceive time from now on, because of the radical changes that it brought. For example, a lot of us had to adapt and start working from home, which is a completely different environment for many reasons, right? For those that are at home alone, might be better. But for those that live with family, it means that they have to completely readapt to the ways that they have to work, and at the same time be able to take care of the kids, if you have kids, but whatever, you know where I'm going with this, right? The family in general, wife, husband, girlfriend, boyfriend, mother, the in-laws, whoever it is that you have living with you, and that now might affect the way that you have to recompose your shift of work during your working hours, or what are supposed to be your working hours. And I think that what is very interesting in all of this is at least this is what I think. Maybe others see it completely different. But since the pandemic, I'm starting to feel that time is slowing down. It's not as fast as it was before the pandemic, when we had what we thought was a regular lifestyle, going to work, coming back home, right? Because of those changes. And maybe this is just me thinking that everything did slow down. Because now, for a lot of us, we don't have to rush in the morning, take a quick shower, have some quick coffee with some piece of toast, which is not what we consider breakfast because that doesn't kill the hunger. We have breakfast maybe later in the office, or we have a break from the office for, I don't know, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever it takes to have a real breakfast during our working hours. Some of us didn't even stop. We continued working while having breakfast, right? So I guess now with the pandemic, we realize that since a lot of us have to work from home, everything that we gave importance changed, right? Because perhaps we have more time to organize things, and we have more time to relax with timing our morning schedule, the way we wake up, the time we have to take a shower, brush our teeth, all of that, let's say, protocolar base for what we used to have as a time schedule during the day. Now, we don't do certain things the way that we did anymore. At least I don't. Okay? I don't need to wake up a certain hour, rush to the shower, and and there's a lot more than just that. It depends also on how you schedule your timing when you have to, for example, do groceries, go do some paperwork outside of work for any reason. If you have to travel or whatever, you need to take the whole aspect of how you manage that bit of time. Now is completely different, right? I believe we relax a little more. We don't have that pressure that we have in the office and in the warehouse or whatever we work, right? So it completely changes the balance, because we seem to had adapted a bunch of habits into the working schedule of the day. Now, those things are, because I don't need to take a shower immediately in the morning. I can take a shower later, right? Now, this is just an example. I still take showers in the morning, but what I'm saying is the adaptability is a little more flexible. You can switch a little more to what you need to do. Also, because since so many people now is working at home, this also means that there's more people at home that has to do those things as well. So you need to readapt. If someone needs to take a shower at 7 in the morning, then you'll have to either wait or take a shower earlier, which means you wake up earlier. Now, of course, 7 o'clock in the morning for a lot of people is already too early. But remember, this is just an example. So let's think about this, for instance, right? In my case, I'm currently living with my brother and my mother. And we're the three of us working. They work in the same field. They work together. But what I do is completely different. So we usually take breakfast together, but then everything else we have to adapt to what each of us needs. So if somebody has to do something specific in the morning and go to the bank or go do whatever, that person has the preference to choose what time they need to shower, the whole process, okay? And everybody else has to adapt their schedule to do everything after that person is ready and allow you to have your time. So every day, each one of us has a different way to adapt to that. It's not all rushing, it's not all. And I think it's kind of healthier. Perhaps we used to think before the pandemic, we used to have a perception about time, and we thought, where did the time go, right? Now, there's another way to perceive time that we also have, and is one that has to do with nostalgia. It's like that old, remember the 70s, man? Remember the 80s? Remember the 90s? Now that's the nostalgic part of it. And we tend to connect that to all the things that we like for some reason. And we tend to forget a lot of the bad stuff, which is weird, right? Because we tend to, a lot of us say this god-awful lie that has nothing to do with what really the truth is about time and how the times were back then and how the times are right now. For example, I miss the old days. That's something that, because we think that the old days were better, but the fact is this, they weren't. We're just connecting the nostalgia factor because of things that we like. A certain type of music, a certain type of way of dressing, fashion, all of that stupid shit that has nothing to do with what really is going on. Because if we have to look back, whenever we say, I miss the old days, I miss when I was a young guy, but we forget that for the most part, those times that we tend to have a certain nostalgic memory, we forget that at those times, there was more violence, more death, more bad stuff happening overall. And that's the difference here. And it's crazy because I already connecting this to what I said about reality of what goes on and what we see on the news. It's very different. Because, as I said a couple of episodes ago, sorry, my throat is a little bit sore and okay. The fact that health is better today, better than it has ever been at any point in time, right? The health system, not just in the US or in Europe, I mean overall, medicine has improved in a way that we really don't think about it too much. Science has advanced to lengths that we don't even conceive to realize because we are in a bubble. We're way too involved with technology, but we don't realize that technology not always existed. Cell phones didn't appear one day out of thin air. Or maybe they did. And maybe that's a trap, right? Maybe they did come out of thin air. Maybe the truth is we don't have any sort of idea how we really managed to build this type of devices. Because it's almost like we have little pocket computers that do everything for us. From we're able to watch movies, we're able to, have an alarm set, a calendar. We can read our emails and we can watch the news. So, it's insane. I mean, if you go back to if you go back to 1997, nobody will ever even conceive the notion. Yes, we were already thinking about having cameras and pictures and photos on the phone, but we never thought of actually being able to watch movies or TV in a device like that. We thought TV was TV. So now, that's the trap. It's all a bubble. And we don't really think about how we are managing time and the way we perceive time. And it's very weird that, at least for me, because I know that some people are not going to agree and they're going to say, oh no, time is going faster now. But I think that time is starting to slow down. Because in some ways we're going backwards. Let me explain that. We're going backwards because we are going back to not needing to live in big cities because with the pandemic, the lockdown, having to work from home, some people had to go to cities to be able to work, right? Or to study, or now we are readapting, and even I think the way we education will change. Now, I'm not gonna go into the politics of how it's gonna be, and no. What I mean is education changes, perhaps because of the pandemic. Schools had to shut down and kids couldn't go to school. Perhaps now a lot of it will be online. We will readapt the schedule of we will go back to homeschooling, which used to be the order of the day way back, right? I'm talking about maybe beginning of the 20th century. It was very normal for a lot of kids to be homeschooled. Now, with the fact that the Industrial Revolution completely changed that and made parents have to work, they couldn't take care of the kids at home, so they had to send kids to school, and that way of dealing with education completely changed, because no longer we rely education on the parents. Now it's something that, let me see if I can say this in a way that parents are no longer educationers. They're just supervising the education of the kids. It's different. Back in the day, parents used to be there to teach the kids their own way. With the growth of industry and everything else that it entailed, because with that came also the fact that women were able to work as well. They started not being housewives. They started being able to go to work as well. Then that chain made parents be forced to give the tutorage of education to their kids to somebody else. And that's the growth of the schooling system. And leaving all the politics aside, because we're not going to go into that, because that's a discussion for another day, and I realize that there's a lot of it's going to be a lot of disagreement in there. But I think that now, because of the circumstances, we're kind of going backwards. We're back at home doing most of the work. We no longer need to do, for example, 8 straight hours or 10 straight hours of work in an office or warehouse or restaurant or wherever you work. That's no longer required. So, of course, with that comes the way that we start to see time, and it makes me think, wait a minute, that's not at all the way that I used to think about time just 2 years ago. And it's a very interesting way to understand time, because I think there's a lot about time that we don't focus on. We spend way too much time with things that we think are extremely important, but I think I'm coming to the realization that there was a lot of broken the way that, at least the way I perceived time before, was a completely broken system, because it was way too robotic. Wake up at this time, take a shower at this time, be ready at this time to be at work at this time, take the train, take the bus, take the walk, or whatever you have to do to get to work, drive, whatever. But now, when you look at it, it was almost everything was automatic. We didn't stop to think, wait a minute, what am I doing here? Because when we start to go way too robotic in our ways, we don't think about a lot of the things that we really have to do. We just rush into it and think about, we occupy our minds way too much with the things that we have to do in the immediate future, right? More than the things that we are doing at this very moment. For example, right now, I'm recording the podcast. And the focus is completely broken by a way of thinking way too much ahead. And I think that, yes, it's okay to plan ahead. But in order for you to plan ahead in a consistent way, you need time. And the way we were rushing onto things, we didn't have time to plan ahead. That's where I'm going with this. We didn't have enough time to do that. That's the craziest part, right? We obsess over planning ahead without actually having time to do it. And it takes some guts to realize that. Not necessarily guts, but it takes a little bit of using brain cells to wake up and say, oh, wait a minute. I actually need time to plan things. I can't just do a list of a bunch of things in 2 seconds and then be always worried about what's coming next, because I'm not focused on what I'm doing now. And that's a mistake. That's a big mistake. Perhaps that's why there's so much corruption, because we adapted to this system where we have to plan way ahead without thinking about what we're doing at this very moment, which is the most important thing. We need to give ourselves a little time to be consistent with the present and not become so obsessed with next week. Oh, but I've got a very important meeting coming up. I have to plan ahead. Yes, all right, plan ahead, fine. But don't obsess too much with the idea of planning ahead. That's what I mean. Because instead of actually planning ahead, you're just going to be thinking about planning ahead without actually doing. Without actually doing it. So, it's a broken process. Because no matter how much you rush things, the clock is still ticking. Time doesn't stop. And that's the only thing that is completely scientific. Time does not stop. Right? So it doesn't matter if you obsess about scheduling a bunch of meetings for this day, that day, and next month. Because that is just going to get worse. And you're not going to actually focus on the real to-do list that you have for now. You're going to be worried about the future all the time. Until it gets to the point where comes a day where either something changes, like a pandemic. But pandemic aside, let's imagine for a minute that the pandemic never happened. COVID doesn't exist. We're going on with our lives the way it always was. If at some point, either for one reason or another, we will have a little bit of time to stop and think, oh, wait a minute. All I'm doing here is way too risky. I'm rushing into things without actually doing the things that are important to do right now. Okay? And that includes working hours, the schedule of working hours, how we have to, schedule some things, call someone, talk to someone about whatever employee we might have, realize how good of a job that person's doing, or maybe that person's not worth our time, that they're not adapting to what we ask them, and maybe fire them. But there's always either because you lost your job, or you're retiring, or whatever the reason may be, at some point when we have 5 minutes to stop and think, oh, wait, hold on. This is insane. Because I'm not actually thinking. Somebody else is thinking for me. Because I'm way too robotic. Wake up every day at 6 in the morning, have breakfast, shower, brush your teeth, and you're not even thinking about that. What you're thinking about is, oh, when I get to the office, I have to do this. Once you're in the office, you're no longer thinking about that. You're already thinking, oh, what's the plan for tomorrow? Or what's the plan for next week? That's not healthy. Because we are way too worried about planning things for tomorrow instead of dedicating our time to what we're doing now. Which should be the most important thing. Get completely focused on the task at hand at that moment. Now I understand the absurdity of it, because of course we have to have an idea of what needs to be done tomorrow. How we have to plan the day so that tomorrow we are organized enough. I understand that. But the map of how we do things is completely wrong. When we become robots that just function through time without any thought process to stop and wait a minute, hold on, why are we doing this way? Why can't we do things this way? Yes, program it, but accordingly. Put a timestamp on the period of time that you're going to dedicate yourself to planning ahead and forget about it the rest of the day. That's already there. Focus on what we're doing now. What's going on now? Oh, we have a meeting with Jack and George. Perfect. Bring them in. Right? That's how it should work. But instead, once Jack and George are there, we're thinking, oh, hold on. Hey, who do we have a meeting with tomorrow? What time is it and why? And Jack and George are there. For some reason, they're there because you schedule a meeting with them at that moment. Now what? What's the plan now, jackass? Right? And of course, what happens is you talk to Jack and George about what's going to happen next week, which is insane because you're not doing your job. You're just talking about what you have to do next week. And it's a vicious cycle. It becomes... We program things way too fast. We want to advance, but what happens is we're stuck in the same place. And that's when things start to go wrong. Because we don't pay attention to whatever we're engineering at this moment. And it's funny that I say this because I'm guilty of that as well. Hey, I already have in my head right now this obsession with finding a subject for the podcast tomorrow. And I don't even know what it is. That's absurd. Slow down and think, what is the task at hand now? Okay, we are designing a new car. What do we need? What do we need now to design the car? Give me a piece of paper, a pencil, perhaps a laptop, and let me start designing and evolving this design through the according process. But please don't say, oh, wait a minute, tomorrow I'm gonna have to do this. I'm gonna have to design this. No. Wrong. What are you doing now? What's the first thing that you're designing in the car? The chassis? The engine? The wheels? We don't start by the roof, right? That's what we've been doing for the past 50 years. We started things by the roof and everything goes wrong and the house falls to pieces. The system is broken. And it's not just because of the politics. It's because of how we handle ourselves with time. And I know that it's very hard for some people to connect those dots. But hey, it kind of makes sense. It makes sense because when you actually stop and realize, what have I been doing with my time all of these years? Wasted. Way too robotic. And we realized that we really didn't think for ourselves. No. We adapted to a system that made us believe that we had our own thinking patterns, but it was designed to make us look like machines. And the irony of this is we're getting close to a time where most machines are taking our jobs. Isn't that ironic? That we went through a system for so long that made us look like little robots, and now the real robots are kind of tossing us aside. Hey Mike, we're gonna have to let you go. Wait a minute, why do you have to let me go? I thought I was doing a good job. I thought, yeah, you were one of the best workers here, but unfortunately we have a machine that does what you do 10 times faster. Well, can't compete with that, can you? So is it really worth to set ourselves for failure that way? Because we will never be machines. Okay? And we need to be able to work and have a salary and have a life. But if we go to work within a system that makes us rush into things without actually stopping to think how, because that's coming back to what I said before. we don't give importance to what we're doing now anymore. And that's completely wrong. We have to rethink the way that we manage time in every aspect. And it sounds crazy, but each of us has a way to do things, and we need our own timing. We can't rush everything because the result is not going to be as good. Right? So maybe think a little bit about this, and I gave a quick summon to the nostalgic way of looking back at the old days, right? And wishing for it to come back. But let's be honest, okay? The only part of that we really wish comes back is the nostalgia. Jesus, can't even speak. See it there, right there. I was rushing into it, thinking way too fast, and I can't keep up the pace of what I'm thinking with what I'm saying. So I start to speak completely incorrectly. And that's another mistake. Redundancy. So, nostalgia brings us, it's a trap. Okay? Now, there's nothing wrong about remembering good times. That's fine. But keep in mind that that's all there is to it. It's just nostalgia. Okay? The old days were not as good as now. The present, 2021, is, even with a pandemic, is as a best time as we ever had. Ever. In all the aspects. Because if we had this pandemic 30 years ago, perhaps the whole population of the earth wouldn't be alive today. But thanks to the advancements of science, medicine, everything else that correlates to that, we are able to manage a pandemic. And yes, I understand that a lot of people did die, but it could be a lot worse than it is. And trust me, if it wasn't 2021, if we were in 1950s right now, oh shit. You know why? Because we wouldn't even know if this was a pandemic. Perhaps, or at the time that we realize that we're in a pandemic, it's way too late. But thanks to the way things are now, with the way the information networks run today, and how fast information travels, we're able to manage those things much, much better than we would have at those times. Much better. And that's the good part about time. That's the good. Those are the good things. That's why I said this podcast is not just about being negative and complaining. It's about analyzing things. Also, understanding the positives. And here we are. 2021. COVID-19. And we're starting to fix the pandemic with the vaccines. Again, not going into the politics of it, because that's always going to be rotten. But all the scientific part, the science community is the best thing we have to fight that. And I hope all of us start rethinking our robotic ways of living for so long. Yes, plan ahead, but focus on what's the task now. Let's put it like this. If I have to fix my car because there's something wrong with the gas tank, the pump or whatever, or the engine even. I have no idea how to fix cars. This is just a way of thinking. But if I knew how to fix a car, the first thing that I have to do is go to the car, take a look at the car, and see what's wrong with it. Try to find out where the problem is. Once that's done, I start, if I have to, research what's the solution for that issue. Then I go into the process of checking if I have everything I need to fix whatever the problem is. And then I fix it. But if I go into it already obsessed with, oh, I need the car tomorrow to run smoothly, I'm gonna screw myself. Because the car will not run smoothly. I might be able to make it run, but it's not going to be perfect. And the best way to be perfect is to be completely focused on what you have to do at that very period of time. Forget everything else. So, once again, the system is broken. And with that, I think I'll leave it at this. This perhaps wasn't as dense as the last few episodes, a little more relaxed and talking about something that we all relate to, one way or the other. Plan ahead, but with a scheme to work right now. Thank you all very much. I'll see you on the next episode of my voice is a weapon.